What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some more battles in the Championship Series Cup, which at the time of recording, Shadow Pokemon are still eligible, so I'm going to take advantage of that and try out the newly released Shadow Pokemon with a bit of a funky moveset in Trevenant on Sucker Punch as the fast move, purely for that Oranguru matchup. Now please excuse the IVs, this was literally the only one I've caught since it's released, and of course, last week we had the opportunity to TM away Frustration, and even though it was the only one I had, I thought I might as well do it anyways. Now, as I say, swap for this team, I'm running Drampa, which has play into pretty much anything in this cup other than the steel types, and then I've also got Bruxis with Crunch specifically as the closer. With that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Would you like to see any Mega Master League content this rotation, or should I just stick to the Championship Series Cup? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Shadow Trevenant into Talonflame. So of course, not a great matchup for me. Gonna throw one Sucker Punch and then say swap into Drampa, and unfortunately met with pretty much the only Pokemon that can completely wall Drampa's moveset here, as we fire off a Swift, really not gonna do too much damage. We do throw on CMP here, and the opponent is gonna go for Psyshock, which I am just barely able to tank and reach a second Swift. Swift is gonna get them into the yellow health range, potentially into Sucker Punch farm down range, but can we get that full farm down before they get to a payback? The opponent does not get to the charge move there. That is quite surprising. We are now going to swap into our Bruxish, and the opponent is going to have Oranguru in the back. Now, of course, we have Crunch specifically for this matchup and other Ghost-type Pokemon as well, where we can deal super effective damage. We are going to grab an early shield advantage there. I'm going to shield up the Brutal Swing, and now I can fire off a second Crunch. If this goes unshielded, this might actually get the KO, and Crunch not shielded. The opponent probably expecting to tank that, but they're not able to do so. Now, this Talonflame does have a ton of energy, but we've also now got a Psychic Fangs. This should force the final shield, otherwise I can Sucker Punch farm them down. The opponent does use their shield there, but they also force into a CMP die, and now we can come in with the Trevenant. Of course, we already had the Shadow Ball loaded, but we go for the extra Sucker Punches just because we can, and I'm able to take out the Talonflame there and take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see another Fire-type Pokemon in the lead. Again, throwing one Sucker Punch and then swapping into Drampa. It's also good to see which fast move the Turtonator is on in this meta. Some of them are going to be on Ember, which is a lot faster. Well, actually not that much faster, but a lot easier in terms of charge move timing when you're running a 2-turn fast move. And also, it does generate energy a little bit faster than Incinerate. But anyways, here, this Drampa is putting in so much work, grabbing a shield advantage, and the opponent, in committing to a farm down, ends up taking a third charge move, and we get both that shield advantage and switch advantage. We now come in with Bruxish. They fire off a Dragon Claw, which probably means they're not on Brutal Swing. Otherwise, why wouldn't they just go for Brutal Swing? But anyways, they come in with a Medicham. This is a Pokemon that Bruxish completely walls. The opponent is going to go ahead and full send the Dynamic Punch, which still does quite a lot of damage there. Bruxish, not exactly bulky, and again, another Pokemon that I don't have the best IVs on, but it shouldn't really matter. At this point, we fire off the Psychic Fangs. The opponent has to throw a charge move, otherwise I'm going to reach another move, or actually just go for a full farm down myself, and of course Confusion gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see a Runerigus in the lead. So, of course, since we're on Sucker Punch, not quite as fast to generate energy, meaning they can actually outpace me to that Brutal Swing. I'm actually going to bank the energy, swap into Drampa, as I expected the opponent to instantly swap out there, but that's not the case. Either way, they fire off the Rock Tomb, they debuff my attack stat, and now they're eventually going to swap into an Arctobax. So here, going to fire off the Swift. Of course, I have been debuffed. The opponent is going to call that one not on Outrage, which is quite a brave call, but now we fire off the Fly. Fly does slightly more damage there, but still unfortunately not quite enough to get the full farm down. Here I couldn't quite farm them down, although actually I probably could have done if I just stayed in and gone for the Sucker Punch. That third one there would have got the KO, but instead we end up tanking an Icy Wind onto my Bruxish. The opponent going to come in with a Gyarados, and this is a non-shadow, so Psychic Fangs doesn't really deal too much damage. Also remember, we had been debuffed there. Excuse me, but Psychic Fangs also does not get the KO, but Gyarados does have a ton of energy. If they're at back-to-back charge moves, we probably cannot win this game here. The opponent We do get them low. Is that one Confusion farm down range? Aqua Tail gets the KO there. And no, unfortunately not. They live with a couple of HP remaining. And unfortunately, I do go down to the Gyarados. But GG's to that trainer into the next battle. Gonna see Oranguru. And this is the reason we're running Sucker Punch. You can see it's actually not that comfortable for me. They're dealing pretty much as much damage with their Farsus as I'm dealing with mine. However, of course, you can see my Trevenant IVs are absolutely awful. It also doesn't get to a great CP either. So potentially with much better IVs, that is a more comfortable matchup. But anyways, we're going to see a Gyarados coming in. We fire off the Swift. I throw straight away there because that could have been a CMP tie. However, the opponent is just going to commit to a full farm down. I'm now going to come in with the Bruxish. I don't mind using my final shield here as I can commit to a full Confusion farm down. However, they do get a debuff with that Crunch. The opponent's going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Shelgon, which is quite cool to see. Of course, Shelgon did get buffed this season, gaining access to Crunch itself, and they can actually, with that Crunch, barely outpace me. Crunch gets the KO there, but we've got a lot of energy, and we did debuff their defense, so Seed Bomb is resisted damage here, but Seed Bomb grabs the final shield. They do not swap, they do not make a catch there, so Seed Bomb puts them into one Sucker Punch farm down range. Oranguru comes back in just to be farmed down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into the next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Charizard in the lead. So, of course, not a great matchup for me. I stay in just to see what fast move it is. I'm then going to swap into my Drampa here. And honestly, I should no-shield this, but actually, you know what? A Blast Burn, if they full send it, would do a ton of damage. So we do end up shielding there. I'm going to fire off a Swift as the opponent is going to shield. They're going to bank a charge move and then come in with the Oranguru. I'm only going to reach one charge move here, it looks like. So I do go for the Fly. Fly, going to do slightly more damage there once again. But we are in a very awkward position as the opponent gets a full farm down. Of course, they've got access to Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is going to hit for super effective damage, but they bait with a Trailblaze. I don't really understand why they did that. I guess expecting me to shield there. Either way, doesn't make any sense at all. But either way, they come back in with a Charizard. I'm going to be forced to no shield here as an Air Cutter will get the KO, but they get the boost. However, they do end up swapping into their final Pokemon, which is going to be a Glalie. So yeah, going to go straight for Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs is going to be no shielded there. And unfortunately, it doesn't quite do enough damage to put them into farm down range. So I'm going to shield the Avalanche bait there, but they do just settle for a second Avalanche. However, Avalanche is a great charge move. Unfortunately, that puts me into range where I won't quite get to back-to-back charge moves as they can fully Dragon Breath, farm down with the Charizard, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle. We're going to see Oranguru in the lead once again. So once again, I'm not going to throw straight away here as it's very likely the opponent will just go straight for that Brutal Swing. So I'm going to shield that up there. They then swap into Runerigus. So I'm going to go straight for Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb should be grabbing a shield. It does exactly that. And now I come in with my Drampa. Of course, I don't need to shield this. Rock Tomb is going to debuff my attack stat, and it's going to mean that a Fly will not get the KO, and it won't even come close, really. But we're going to fire off the Fly anyways. Fly is going to connect, and they can now fire off a charge move of their own. Brutal Swing gets the KO there. I can come in with either Pokemon realistically, but I'm going to come back in with the Bruxish, assuming the opponent is going to swap out straight away, which they do. They come in with a Gyarados. I'm going for Psychic Fangs, which they know they can tank, but now, of course, I can just safely shield this up, even if they've got back-to-back charge moves. Doesn't matter, as, of course, Confusion gets the KO. I then swap back into Trevenant to force the opponent to throw some energy. Now, this is still a little bit dicey because they do have a Runerigus on fairly low HP here, but unfortunately one Confusion does not get the KO. However, they're at 1 HP, so we get the KO through the shield, and we have back-to-back Psychic Fangs. So Psychic Fang number 2 gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top in there into the next battle. We're going to see Dugong in the lead. So, a bit tricky for me, but I will just stay in this matchup. I'm happy to play out the 0 shield scenario or even the 2 shield scenario, which they will just fully fight me down, but I should be grabbing both shields from the opponent. So here, we're going to be able to grab a shield there. They then swap, make a very nice catch there, catching onto Oranguru. And of course, they didn't swap out on alignment there, so they get a Confusion through, which does end up getting the KO. I'm going to come in with my Drampa just because, of course, I have Bruxish in the back that is going to resist the damage from the Dugong. Again, Oranguru going for Trailblaze there. Don't understand that play whatsoever. But we get the KO with the Swift. Here, I then make a mistake there. I tried to swap out after I saw what came in, but I'd already clicked on the Swift, so Swift gonna be no-shielded by the opponent. That is certainly not ideal for me. However, I'm gonna shield. The opponent fires off the Rage Fist, and now I predicted the opponent would be swapping straight away back into their Dugong, so I throw the Psychic Fangs before they can potentially debuff me with an Icy Wind. The opponent is gonna go ahead and bait anyways with the Icy Wind. This should now be a drill run. However, we still have a chance. I'm resisting the fast move damage. It doesn't look like I can quite commit to a full farm down, but I am pretty close. Well, actually, because we get the debuff there with that Psychic Fangs, we do get the farm down, and I can reach a last second Psychic Fangs here. Psychic Fangs gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. Going to see Oranguru in the lead once again. So, once again, just going to play this out here. Going to shield the first charge move, and then the opponent likely going to swap out of this matchup eventually anyways. But they're going to swap into a Charizard. So here, I'm going to go straight for Shadow Ball, look to grab a shield, and then swap into my Bruxish. However, this isn't that good of a matchup for the Bruxish, especially since I gave them such a huge energy advantage. As well, they get the boost with the Air Cutter, which is going to mean the next Air Cutter probably threatens to get the KO here. I definitely should have just no-shielded the first move, but I realized Blast Burn would very nearly KO. But yep, they get another boost. Definitely not ideal for me. I don't think I can come in with a Dramper just because I feel like they will get to another charge move. So we come in, we sacrifice the Trevenant here. Of course, Air Cutter gets the KO. Their final Pokemon gonna be a Turtonator, and I should have gone for the Fly. Instead, I go for Swift. I thought this would be enough damage, but it's just barely not enough there. Fly only going to do slightly more damage, but I think that would have been enough to get the KO, and so unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see an XL Ledian in the lead. That is cool to see. Of course, we have Bruxish in the back, which is not going to appreciate the Bug Bite damage. So I will just stay in with my Trevenant. Going to shield up the Aerial Ace and then full send a Shadow Ball. If they no-shield this, it still won't quite get the KO, but it does put them into Sucker Punch farm down range. Let's see what the opponent wants to do. They're going to come in with a Skarmory. Honestly, another Pokemon I was not expecting to see in this meta. And honestly, a Pokemon that almost completely walls my backline, so this is a bit tricky for me. I'm going to come in with the Bruxish because I can at least resist the fast move damage here. And of course, I do also have access to Crunch. I'm going to shield. They full send a Brave Bird, but then they swap into Medicham. And we've already seen this. We completely wall this Pokemon. So this is fine with me. We can fire off the Psychic Fangs. Obviously not dealing that much damage just yet. But, of course, now Confusion is dealing more damage. They fire off an Ice Punch bait there. Definitely don't mind that. We can go for another Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs is going to be no-shielded. It gets the KO. They come back in with the Skarmory. I'm going to look to massively over-farm. Firing off another Psychic Fangs here. I realize this is resisted damage, but my win condition is just spamming out resisted charge moves because now they're double debuffed. We swap into Dramper. We're going to force them to throw, but they end up throwing on CMP. And of course, Swift, now they're double debuffed, gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent there into the next battle. Another Bug and Flying type lead Pokemon in Vespiquen. I did actually try Vespiquen on this team in place of both the Dramper and the Bruxish, but it just didn't really work out for me. I just couldn't figure out how to make it work in this meta. But we're going to go for Shadow Ball here. We're still going to stay in. They're actually on Poison Sting, by the way, which is... I don't know if you would run Poison Sting in this meta. I can't think of any Pokemon where Poison Sting is actually going to be useful for you, so I definitely recommend Fury Cutter. Poison Sting obviously going to generate energy slightly faster than Fury Cutter, but Fury Cutter has the option to hit Pokemon like Oranguru for super effective, which is kind of what you want from your Vespiquen. But anyways, they're going to come in with a Dusknoir. I'm going straight for Fly here. Fly, going to deal decent damage there. What the heck even came out of my mouth there? But we are going to go and no-shield this, hoping this is their only Ghost-type Pokemon on the team. Of course, we realized they were going to get to another charge move anyways. But unfortunately, they've got a Turtonator on Ember as the fast move. So here, I realize they're probably not going to shield the first move. So I do full send a Crunch. Crunch does not get the debuff, however. And of course, they can go for Brutal Swing. Before I get the farm down, they will reach another charge move. And Brutal Swing won't quite get the KO from this range. But it does put me into like 1 HP range here. So unless they no-shield this for whatever reason, unfortunately, the damage from their fast move will get the KO. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there, into the next battle. You can see Gyarados in the lead, so we are going to no-shield this because they just go straight for an Aqua Tail. That's fine with me. The opponent is then going to make a very nice catch there, catching onto Dragonair, where Seed Bomb is resisted damage. But now we can come in with our own Dragon-type Pokemon and go straight for Swift. Winning CMP up against the Dragonair. Swift is going to get the KO. And let's see, the opponent's going to come back in with the Gyarados, but Drampa can still reach another charge move, and Swift probably doesn't quite KO from this range, but it does grab the shield anyways, and with a few more Dragon Breaths, yeah, it probably would have taken them out. So at this point, of course, we've got a shield advantage. Gyarados does have quite a lot of energy here, so I'm definitely going to shield, respect the damage. The opponent is going to go ahead and bait with an Aqua Tail, so you know what? I'm going to snipe them with the Trevenant, and their final Pokemon is another Dragon-type Pokemon in Flygon, but we can fire off the Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb grabs the final shield, and now all I need to do is commit to a Crunch. The opponent trying to farm up to back-to-back charge moves, but Crunch is going to connect. It gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there, into the next battle. We're going to see Dugong in the lead. So, once again, a bit of an awkward matchup for me, but I will just stay in here as I can deal super effective damage with these Seed Bombs. The opponent's likely going to shield the first charge move here, and they do exactly that. They're then going to throw after one Ice Shard, so good timing on their end. I'm going to shield this as they fire off the Icy Wind, and unfortunately, they're able to catch a debuffed, double-resisted Seed Bomb onto a Talonflame. So, not ideal for me. I'm going to come in with my Drampa, and I realize any one charge move that I throw is not going to KO from this range. They full send a Brave Bird, so what I probably should have done here is just committed to a full Dragon Breath farm down, since likely if they went for Brave Bird there, it means they don't have Fly, which means, of course, they would not reach another charge move, or it would take them 3 more Incinerates to get to the next move there, so I probably should have committed to a full farm down. But anyways, they come back in with the Dugong, we can come in with the Bruxish, and I will be able to wait and swap Cash the charge move onto my Trevenant. Is this a way back into this match for me? We are now going to look to overfarm here. Unfortunately, not going to be able to fully farm them down with my Bruxish. So instead, firing off the Psycho Fangs after overfarming, but they're going to have a Drifblim in the back. So unfortunately, my only win condition is if they no-shield the first move, expecting a Psycho Fangs debuff. But they do play it safe there. They use the shield. And unfortunately, we go down to the fast move damage. But GG's to a trainer into the next battle. We're going to see Goodra in the lead. So I do resist the typical charge moves from the Goodra. They end up swapping into the Oranguru. So I'm going to go for a Seed Bomb. Since I'm on Sucker Punch, the opponent might also expect foul play there. So they do end up shielding. I'm now going to come in with the Drampa as they fire off a Brutal Swing. Now here, I'm actually not that fussed about switch advantage. I fire off the Swift on CMP, winning CMP, and I am going to no-shield this. Brutal Swing doesn't KO there. I'm actually going to allow them to farm me down because now we can come in and get the farm down with the Bruxish, get an energy advantage, but they do actually just swap straight away back into Goodra. So I'm going to shield the Thunder Punch there, and I'm then going to swap back into my Shadow Trevenant, and now I can fire off a Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb is going to be shielded by the opponent, and we do get them fairly low. However, unfortunately, I will still need to shield. They do have quite a lot of energy, so I'm not going to overfarm at all. Instead, going to go straight for Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs gets the KO there. And then final Pokemon, again, going to be a Medicham, another Pokemon that we completely wall. They swap back into Oranguru, trying to catch a charge move, but that only gives me more energy. We can go straight for Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs, not going to deal that much damage once again, but now, after that one confusion, I can go straight for Crunch, and Crunch, with that debuff, should be enough damage to KO here. So Crunch will be taking out the Medicham, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG jump on there into the next battle. We're going to see Turtonator in the lead once again. So, once again, I'm going to go for one Sucker Punch and then swap out, but they're actually on Ember as the fast move. So, Ember is actually going to allow them to outpace me to this charge move. I'm going to shield that up. They then come in with a Psycho Cut Medicham. But this is fine with me. We've got access to Fly. Fly is going to deal huge damage there, and now I can actually reach a Swift as they do overfarm. Swift grabs a shield from the Medicham, and at this point, I think I will just let Trampa go down. Dynamic Punch gets the KO there. They should be able to live, what the heck? They should be able to reach an Ice Punch up against my Trevenant. So I should come in with the Bruxish, as again, we do wall the energy. Now they're going to come in with Oranguru, and I'm going to go straight for a Crunch. Crunch, of course, going to hit for super effective damage. If this connects, it's going to deal big damage as well. So at this point, I am going to also shield, use my final shield there. We're going to stay in. I'm going to look to swap back into Trevenant, go for the farm down snipe there. They come back in with the Detonator, and honestly, I thought I would probably live a Brutal Swing, but we don't live it, and unfortunately, they will outpace me to back-to-back charge moves here, or sorry, back to another Brutal Swing before we get to back-to-back Psychic Fangs, so unfortunately, I will be losing this game. Brutal Swing gets the KO there. And we do end up losing. But GG's to that trainer into possibly the final battle of this video, leading into a Alolan Raichu, which is a great lead matchup for me. Quite a good core breaker actually into a lot of teams. However, of course, I'm actually kind of double strong into it. But either way, we fire off a Seed Bomb into Dugong. I'm now going to swap into my Bruxish as it has the worst play, of course, into the Raichu. And of course, I do have two Pokemon that are weak to Ice. Now, they full send a Blizzard there, which I was not expecting, but I can tank it as it is resisted. Here we go for Crunch. Crunch is not going to get a debuff, but it does grab a shield from the opponent. We're now going to come back in with our Shadow Trevenant, and the opponent is going to swap straight away into Hakamoa. Now, this is not the best matchup for Drampa, however, we do have a shield advantage, so I'm going to shield the upper hand. I'm now going to look to overfarm here, going to fire off that Swift, and Swift should get the KO. Swift going to grab the final shield from the opponent, so now I'm actually going to shield this, commit to a full farm down, and what this should do is force the opponent to throw straight away. The opponent gonna do exactly that, as they don't want to tank a charge move from the Drampa. However, we've now got access to the Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb from a Shadow Trevenant will KO the Alolan Raichu, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.